Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story in which our OP was kicked out of work by a horrible boss. Well, it didn't take long for him to get his revenge. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Traumatize me and throw me out like an old rag, will you? During 2011, I had a job with a company I shall call VM as an IT assistant. So my boss, let's call him Andy, personally designed the entire system over a period of 17 years. Andy's somewhat of a programming prodigy, which made him one of those types that had no patience with others. He would write instructions for completing certain tasks that were missing steps, and he would get upset at me when I pointed them out. Basically, he didn't want to teach someone or assist them to understand the system he'd built up. He complained that I asked questions rather than taking calculated risks, as he called it, but I learned as a programmer to be thorough and make sure and never take risks with the data or daily operations. There were many examples of him leaving me with projects that needed to be done, but he himself did not want to bother answering questions or pointing me in the right direction. To be fair, there were exceptions. Towards the end of the year, Andy went on a month-long vacation to Vietnam and dropped this huge project on me that involved importing data, and it had to be done in 4 hours, but there were problems. The wiki he left to follow was so full of holes you could drive a battleship through it, and the import itself involved so much data to be imported that it took 5 hours for the data import to finish. Another project was to install a major upgrade to a piece of specialty accounting and customer issue tracking software that they paid a company I shall call BS $14,000 for. I discovered that the software was not a finished product but a beta version and was full of bugs. Andy told me not to install that software until they fixed the bugs, and I worked with BS to get the bugs fixed, and I received high praise in my great job in helping BS track down their bugs. She cited an email from BS stating that if it weren't for me, they would not have been able to fix all those bugs in the 6 weeks it took them to fix it. When Andy returned from Vietnam, he had me in for the 12-month review, and on that review were demerits for not installing that beta software until 6 weeks after the deadline instead of praise for helping BS fix all the bugs. He'd also told me not to work on the new phone system and then blamed me for not getting it done. He told me that my job was not in danger, but that I needed to do better, and that lit a fire under me to work all the more to do better. The job was so stressful that I would start to pass out while trying to eat in the morning, and I'd have to literally crawl to the bathroom at night to tinkle. All my friends could see the toll the job stress was taking on me, was ripping me apart. 2 weeks later, I was let go with a week's severance pay and back pay. I felt relief, and I felt terrible. I lost my job, and in these difficult times, losing a job was not an option. Stressful as that job was, I frankly would rather have had a fatal heart attack than lose that job. It wasn't long before I rose up from all the browbeating and began to figure out what was going on and what Andy had done to me. And now to the revenge. The owner of the company, I shall call him Mark, liked me, and we were friends, and about a week later I sent him an email pointing out the discrepancies on my review and said, "He lied on that review. You remember me getting high praise from your daughter." I said, "If he can lie to me, he can lie to you. How trustworthy can he be?" You can see the exchange about the bugs in my email. Your company's gone through uncounted employees looking for someone who understands the system as well as Andy does, but that person does not exist because Andy is not willing to teach or help beyond the most rudimentary and inadequate steps. How many employees have you gone through, and how many more will your company go through and pay severance pay to because Andy isn't willing to take the time to teach them the ropes? It wasn't long before I heard from a friend of Andy's that he was told not to hire anyone else but to outsource the code to someone else, but none locally wanted to tackle it, knowing what a labyrinth it was. Andy ended up having to outsource it to some overseas company, and that Andy was upset with this because he couldn't explain what the code needed to do, and the programmers there made so many errors that it takes me longer to fix the code than it would if I'd just written it myself. A few months later, I saw that Andy had quit, and my friend said he was tired of all the BS and took a job somewhere else as a plain old programmer instead of a supervisor. I'd like to think that I had something to do with all the BS that caused him to quit a job of 17 plus years, and I'm glad to know he's not a supervisor who can inflict his special brand of passive-aggressive abuse on others. I think what really happened is he hired me, then used me to fill in, a job I was not ready for him so he could use his accumulated vacation time, and then I was given the boot. And our second story. Impatient FedEx driver. This just happened on my way home from work. I was driving along in the right lane of a 4-lane street when a FedEx truck rolls up to a stop sign on a side street. Rather than actually coming to a stop and waiting for me to pass, the driver decides he's in too big of a hurry and pulls out right in front of me, causing me to hit the brakes to keep from hitting him. Traffic was very light and there were no cars behind me, so he only saved himself a couple of seconds with that move. I ended up back in front of him a couple of blocks later and really had no desire to retaliate, but then I saw his right blinker come on and I couldn't resist. No, I didn't slam on my brakes or do anything that could cause a wreck. My youthful road raging days are long over. I just took the same turn he was going to take, which was onto a 2-lane, 30-mile-per-hour, long, winding residential neighborhood road, and proceeded to drive 20 miles per hour. There were 2 separate 4-way stop intersections along this road, and I made absolutely sure I came to a complete stop at both of them, even though there were no other cars on the road. I waited the recommended 3 seconds before cautiously proceeding through them. Eventually, he took a left turn toward his drop, but I noticed the street he turned onto was a dead end. The maniacal laughter in my head was almost deafening at this point. I backtracked about a block, turned off on another side street, and waited, hoping that he only had the one drop and would be coming back out the way we went in. Jackpot! Less than a minute later, I see him coming up the hill and around the bend, so I cautiously pull out of the side street in front of him and proceed to go 20 miles per hour the entire way back out of the neighborhood, coming to a complete stop at both 4-way intersections and waiting the recommended 3 seconds before proceeding cautiously through them. By the time we got back to the main road where we first met, I was feeling pretty happy. The FedEx driver never tailgated me or acted aggressively in any way. He accepted his fate and went on about his business, and I had a nice detour through a neighborhood I'd never seen before. As I turned right and he turned left, I gave him a quick honk and a wave. He didn't acknowledge me, but I know we're buddies now. And our last story. HOA won't let us paint our houses any color. As background, we live in a $12 a month HOA. That's not a typo. When we moved in 5 years ago, we were told the board was totally chill and not to worry about it. This was true for 4 years. I was even on the board for a couple of months, but last year the board was taken over by the crazies in our neighborhood, and they hired a new management company who immediately began harassing the living hell out of everyone. Fast forward to now. We recently asked the Art Committee for approval to paint our house a similar but lighter color than it currently is. They said we had to paint a sample of the new color on our home in a 2x2 square visible from the street for their review. This is a new requirement. When I was on the board, the ARC had always approved colors based on paint chips. The CC&Rs just require the use of a muted earth-related color. We refused because we didn't know when the painter could complete the project, and we didn't want a colored patch on our home all summer, or longer, especially because we might decide to sell later this year. But we instead painted a large board and placed it in front of our house. The HOA denied our paint request, claiming our color was not a earth-related tone as required by the CC&Rs. This is BS, but whatever, opinions can differ. We didn't care that much about the color, so rather than fight it, we said fine. There's a house down the street that had its paint color approved in 2019 and is similar to what we picked. We'll use that color instead. We even got the exact paint color from that neighbor and submitted it with our request. The ARC again denied our request, saying we had to paint this new proposed color on our house before it would be considered. I told them no, I wasn't going to do that, and that they could see a house-size sample of the color we proposed by driving a half block past our home and looking to their left. They again refused our request. So we said, look, we don't care about the color, just tell us an approved color, any approved color, and we'll paint our home that color. If you want, pick the last house you approved, give us the color, and we'll use that. They again refused, claiming we had to put up a sample before they would consider it. At this point, they're refusing our first color because they subjectively decided it isn't a muted earth-based tone. They're refusing to approve a previously approved color because they don't like where our sample is located, 1,000 yards down the street, and won't approve literally any color unless we guess what it is, get a sample, and paint it on our home. My husband suggested we paint multiple samples on our home and tell the ARC, pick which color you like, the F, the U, the C, the K, or the U. I think we'll just spend our paint budget on a vacation instead. Update. I just received a call from the HOA management company saying that the ARC decided to assemble a list of pre-approved paint colors for the neighborhood, and the color of the house down the street that we selected will be on that list. Therefore, they'll approve our request to paint our house the same color as the house down the street, and they've canceled the appeal hearing scheduled for next week. So I guess calmer heads eventually prevailed. I'm glad they're reviving the process to provide a method of picking a color that doesn't involve defacing your own house, and I look forward to seeing how many shades of beige sadness they can put on the approved paint list. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.